which is kind of nuts if you have Dalvin Cook as your guy. Guys, what went wrong here for the Vikings? Peter, set the table.
Yeah, you know, Flip is one of the hottest names in coaching less than 6 months ago. The Eagles win the Super Bowl. He was the quarterback's coach. He interviewed for head coaching jobs. Fast forward all the way to February 8th, the Vikings, who had lost Pat Shurmur to take the Giants job, hired him as an offensive coordinator. He came from the outside to a team that had already gone to the NFC Championship game. If that sounds familiar, it's because Kirk Cousins did the same thing. Came from the outside and is joining a team that's already been through the battles. DeFilippo is a passing quarterback. That's what a passing coach. That's what he is. Something crazy happened to this team, and I'll start with the tragedy. Late July, their offensive line coach, Tony Sparano, passed away. Tony Sparano was the glue in that offensive coaching staff. And when you're trying to rebound from something like that, you've got to look to everyone in the building and say, well, we rely on each other. We rely on what we know. It's no excuse. But it cannot be overstated how important Tony Sparano was to this team. The offensive line, it's not an offensive line of first-round picks. That's sixth-round picks. That's undrafted free agents. It's a bunch of guys that they acquired off waiver wires and pick. That offensive line's been atrocious this year. They haven't had a true offensive line coach in their ear. And then you start getting to tension. When things aren't going right, you start nitpicking, you start looking at each other. And I can tell you, behind closed doors, Zim and Flip, they have not been on the same page this past month. And to salvage the season, the Vikings thought the best bet was to take someone off the coaching staff and try to get a spark plug. In 2012, the Ravens fired Cam Cameron in Week 14 of the NFL season. They elevated Jim Caldwell, and they went on to win the Super Bowl. That is how the Vikings are looking at this thing. Let's try to salvage the season now because we are not going anywhere with what we had, the status quo. But yes, John DeFilippo, back in February, a head coaching candidate, now out of work.
Okay, you teed up this topic, and you said, Peter, set the table. For me, that's the problem. The table was set. Everything was there. The expectations were too high. Last year, they go out and they sign Kirk Cousins, right? They give him that big old bag of money. He walks in. Everything was on the table. They had the appetizers. They had the entrees. They had the side salads. They had the drinks. They had the wine. They had everything you needed. All you had to do was make sure that it was the perfect party, and they got to the Super Bowl. 13-3, now 6-1. This isn't what they expected. That's the problem. That's why DeFilippo got fired, because you're sitting back and you're saying, how are we this close to the Super Bowl, yet this year we seem further than ever? We always say on the show, winning solves everything. Well, losers causes destruction, and they're imploding from within, and this is the first sign of things not working. So when you go to a team and you're so close to the Super Bowl, I remember saying, I love the fact that Kirk Cousins got money. I love the fact that he's one of those guys that can wake up and throw for 4,000 yards. But the expectations are too high. Because if you don't make the Super Bowl, it's a failed season, and that's what it is right now.
But the expectations were high because they paid Kirk Cousins all of that money. So I remember it's crazy that I'm talking about this December 12th after in August saying that this was a ticket to the Super Bowl was what they paid Kirk Cousins. Not because I thought they're a Super Bowl team, but because that's the kind of money you pay when you have a small window and you have the team that's going to make it there. You have the run game. You have the new hot, flashy offensive coordinator. You have the quarterback who you think, even though you haven't seen it track record-wise, can win in big games. It's impossible to have two of the best wide receivers in the National Football League, a solid run game. Granted, the offensive line's been banged up, but to have a quarterback that you paid that much money to not work out. Like, I totally understand a move happening, and happening now with what that's my only question. Why right now? And what you laid out sort of makes sense. We've heard a lot about this run game, right? And you can blame the offensive line. And Coach Zimmer was, on calls and talking about how they need to run the ball more. You know that there's got to be tumult going on back there. I don't have to be a genius or have insider info to tell that if you're bringing it to the media, if you're putting it in the public and you're not keeping it in-house, you're not happy with what's going on. I know Mike Zimmer, defensive-minded guy, wants to run the rock. I think he probably tried running the rock, which they have like a third of the time less than they did last year successfully. And you can blame that on the O-line. Whatever it is, it's not working, and somebody had to pay.
No doubt. And the right now question to me is I feel like this was a week too late. It's better to do it a week early than a week late. You scored 10 against New England. Say, let's give it another try. So you lose another game, you score 6, and now it's out. That loss very well could cost them the playoffs. And this is a frustrating topic for me because I talk about this all the time. This time of year is when we got the good teams, and there's teams that matter. The Vikings never beat anybody. I talked about this yesterday. They don't really matter. We're talking about their coordinator getting fired. There's a million reasons. Obviously, Zimmer wants to run the crap out of it and play defense. And if I'm DeFilippo, I'm like, We just paid all this money. We got these great wide receivers. We got Rudolph. Let's throw the thing. Like, that seems like a marriage that I don't know how it really even got to this point from the beginning. It was almost like it was an arranged marriage. And then on top of that, the problems, the defense isn't as good as it was last year. They should take some. They give up another touchdown a game. The offensive numbers are actually similar. It's just, guys, there's no juice. We talk about it all the time. Thielen's caught on the sideline of the game last week doing an F-bomb to Cousins about it's been there all bleeping day. He's pissed. I'm pissed. Are you going to beat the Dolphins this weekend? That's all I really care about. I don't care who your coach is or who your coordinator is. This is an also-ran team.
Does Mike Zimmer deserve some of the blame?
Of course he does. The defense isn't as good. He's the head coach, and you have a loaded roster. You know, we talk about these teams like the Colts who are doing great this year, or the Dolphins who are right there. They don't have the Vikings roster. The Vikings are juggernauts. They got everything, and they got nothing.
Listen, we're talking about Zimmer, DiFilippo, the defense, the O-line, the running backs, but we yet to mention Kirk Cousins.
He needs to play better.
Are we going to be dismissive of the fact that he's not playing that well either? He gets paid a ton of money, right? And I know we don't count other people's pockets, but we have to do it when you're a top-tier quarterback getting top-tier money. When Matt Stafford isn't playing well, what do we say? We criticize him about winning the game. Derek Carr, when he wasn't playing well, what happened? They fired Todd Downing, their offensive coordinator, because things weren't working out. Kirk Cousins, 16 turnovers this year. It's tied for first in the NFL. Now, you get paid $90 million. The expectations are high. When Cam Newton is getting paid that much and he missed throws in the end zone to win the game, we say, Cam Newton, you're struggling. We'll say same thing to Kirk Cousins. Like, we can blame everybody, but let's make sure the blame is evenly balanced. When you're getting paid $90 million, you better play like a $90 million quarterback.
More on this throughout the show. A lot of takes here at the breakfast table to start the morning, but moving on.